It's much more fun to be his friend than it is to be his enemy, because this guy is f***ing.
What the hell's going on? Bro, look, you suck, bro. Like, there's never a moment when you said something and we was like, ooh, bars.
I just want to say this. 50 this Madonna for it.
Yeah, you know.
50 Cent had dissed me. I was thinking like, man, cool the whole time. Every time I saw him, so I was somewhere waiting for him. I'm walking in the hall, and he was about to walk past me. I grabbed him like, yo, what's up, man? Like, what you saying? He looked at me, and then he grabbed me and pulled me in the room. So everybody probably thought he was gonna like hurt me or something, but.
You might think 50 Cent's a perfect rapper, the one who runs the whole rap industry, but hold up, you're wrong. In this game, what you see on stage doesn't always match what goes down behind the scenes. Several big names dared to step up and challenge his crown, sparking heated battles, secret jabs, and rivalries. Rap fans, get ready. You're about to hear the real stories behind these battles and the tracks that set speakers on fire. Let's first talk about the whole Fat Joe and 50 Cent thing. Back in like the mid-2000s, Fat Joe was already a big deal. He'd been around forever, repping the Bronx and dropping hit after hit. People knew him for songs like Lean Back and What's Love. So yeah, he was respected. Then out of nowhere, Joe says on a radio show that he helped make the beat for 50's massive track, Candy Shop. Now, if you don't know, that beat is one of the most famous in hip hop. So you can imagine how wild that claim sounded to everyone, especially to 50 Cent himself. 50 didn't just shrug it off. Nah, he saw it as like a slap in the face. When you make something real big, your fans and your street cred are everything. So him claiming Joe had a hand in creating that beat? To 50, it was a straight up lie and a challenge to his authenticity. You don't mess with someone's real life story in this game. So 50 got on Piggy Bank, a track that was all about calling Joe out. He went line by line, name checking Joe, poking fun at his crew, even joking about his mixtapes. It was savage, yeah, but it made people pay attention. And man, people went crazy for it. Clubs in New York started blasting Piggy Bank nonstop. DJs couldn't get enough of those disses. It was like every bar was a headline. Some fans even made t-shirts with the lyrics, playlists filled up with back and forth tracks, and Twitter, you know, Twitter was still new then, lit up with memes and hot takes. For a minute there, you couldn't escape it. But here's the thing. Underneath all that shouting and insult trading, both guys were trying to grow. Fat Joe was pushing to reach a bigger audience, like more radio play and big brand deals. Meanwhile, 50 Cent was busy building up G-Unit, getting guys signed, making movies, starting his own label. They bumped into each other at award shows, on red carpets, even at those late night talk shows. Everywhere they went, people whispered about who might have the upper hand next. It's crazy how one comment about a beat can turn into months of back and forth. But yeah, that's hip hop. Your word is your bond, and if someone tries to rewrite your story, you have to respond. Fat Joe and 50 Cent kept at it, dropping tracks, interviews, even mixtape snippets, just firing shots. And every time someone thought the beef was over, one more line reignited it. It was like a soap opera, but with way harder beats. Fast forward almost 20 years, that's right, 2 decades later, they finally shook hands and called a truce. Both of them had gone through so much. New albums, business moves, family life, you name it. The world changed, they changed, and that old dispute just didn't feel worth it anymore. But for a hot minute, the Bronx streets felt like a war zone, and every rap line was a bullet. Looking back now, the Fat Joe versus 50 Cent beef reminds us how serious words can be, especially when your reputation is on the line. In hip-hop, you don't just drop bars, you stake your truth on them. And if someone tries to steal that truth, well, yeah, you gotta fight back. Next rapper who hates 50 Cent is J. Rule. In past Ja Rule and 50 Cent actually ran in the same circles. Picture small studios, late night sessions, passing beats around, all that. They were under one roof, you know what I mean? Sometimes friends, sometimes just sharing space. But then, in 1999, something crazy happened. 50 Cent got shot 9 times in a robbery. It was serious, nearly killed him. After that, fingers started pointing. Everyone wondered who set it up, and each guy thought the other's crew was behind it. From there, one little rumor snowballed into a straight-up war. On Ja Rule's side was Murder Inc., a label that knew how to blend hard rap with catchy hooks. Ja had that smooth voice, tracks that played on radio, clubs. It was everywhere. On 50's side was G-Unit, A crew built on street stories, raw honesty, and that no-nonsense vibe. Suddenly, Queens wasn't just about block parties, it was about which crew you rep. Kids on the corner had to pick a side, and mixtape DJs felt the pressure to spin Ja Rule's response or 50's latest attack. J. Rule dropped Loose Change, calling out G-Unit, talking about fake friends and fake loyalty. Then 50 came back with Back Down, basically telling Ja to step off and saying Murder Inc. was all talk. Every bar was loaded. They roasted each other's fashion choices, neighborhood cred, even personal rumors. Tracks were leaked online. On CDs you could only get from certain street vendors, and on the radio too. You'd turn on Hot 97 or Power 105 and boom, there it was, the newest cut in their feud. Phones were blowing up with people saying, "Yo, did you hear what he said about you?" It got so intense that sometimes it felt like the music was the least of it. There were tense moments at award shows or when both appeared on the same stage, even if they weren't performing together. Just being in the same building felt risky. Security had to step in. But still, every time Ja Rule or 50 showed up on a track, fans would cheer or boo depending on who they supported. It was like a sports game, but with lyrics. Even with all the shouting though, you could sense a weird respect under it all. Both guys were grinding so hard to make it big, and both influenced thousands of artists who followed. J. Rule had that sing-song style that later inspired others, and 50 Cent's Come Back from the Dead story? Man, that was legendary. So yeah, pride and hurt feelings kept them at each other's throats, but neither side could really ignore how strong the other was. Years later, they squashed it. No big press conference or anything, just a handshake backstage and an on-the-record "we cool now." Still, people remember that Ja Rule vs. 50 Cent chapter is part of Queen's history now. It showed how fast things can change, from friends sharing beats to rivals trading shots and songs, and it taught everyone watching that in this world, a single moment can flip your life upside down. Yeah, it was messy, but it made some of the most memorable tracks in hip-hop. Now let me tell you about Cam'ron and how he and 50 Cent went back and forth for a bit. Cam was already known for his wild style. Pink fur coats, flashy jewelry, always walking around Harlem like he owned the block. He had that smooth confidence, talking with a smirk, and wearing bright colors that made everyone look twice. 50 Cent, on the other hand, was all about that tough guy image. Dark clothes, serious face, always ready for a fight. Their styles couldn't have been more opposite, but that's what made their little feud so entertaining. It actually kicked off with the phone call. 50 Cent was talking about Coke Entertainment, the label some folks thought was risky to join. He said it was like a graveyard for rappers, meaning if you signed there, your career might just die out. Well, Jim Jones, one of Cam's crew, had just signed with Coke. When Cam heard 50 talking smack about that label as if Jim was a lost cause, he took it real personal. He felt like 50 was disrespecting his whole team. Cam didn't waste any time. He grabbed a mic, hopped on a track, and started firing back with lines that felt more like jokes than threats. He dragged 50's name through the mud, but he did it with humor. One of his moves was naming his own album Curtis, poking fun at 50's album with the same title. It was clever because it said, "Hey, I can do what you do, but I'll do it my way." Fans loved that. Cam's way was loud, proud, and a little over the top. 50 Cent answered back too. On mixtapes and radio shows, he'd drop a quick verse, reminding listeners why his name carried weight. His jokes weren't as colorful as Cam's, but they stung because they hit at Cam's street cred and his crew's choices. Still, you couldn't get mad at either guy. It felt like watching two friends mess around more than two enemies plotting revenge. The best part was how fast everything happened. One day, they're both chilling at a club. The next, there are new tracks you can download off mixtape sites, with both of them going at it lyrically. DJs would play their lines back to back, and the crowd would pick which side was funnier or sharper. It got people talking all over New York, from the brownstone stoops in Harlem to the corner stores in South Jamaica. Even though they threw shade, Cam later said he actually enjoyed it. He told interviewers it felt like sparring at the gym, two athletes testing each other's skills, and yeah, it kept both of them in the spotlight. Whenever the feud heated up, their names trended online, magazines ran stories, and radio stations played their diss tracks on repeat. After a little while, they both decided enough was enough. No big ceremony or anything. Cam dropped a mixtape where he gave a shout out to 50, saying he respected him. Then 50 did an interview mentioning Cam was a legend in his own right. Just like that, the feud was over. Looking back, the Cam'ron versus 50 Cent moment shows how in hip-hop, a bit of friendly fire can turn into must-hear music. It wasn't about real hatred, more like two artists pushing each other to be wilder and sharper. And honestly, it gave fans some of the most fun tracks from that era. Now let's turn to The Game and 50 Cent. This one got real intense. Back in 2005, The Game was the first West Coast rapper to join G-Unit. At first, it felt like a perfect match. You had G-Unit's raw energy and buzz, and then The Game showed up with that LA style and attitude. His first album shot straight to #1, and people were like, yeah, this is dope. He looked coast to coast, legit, you know? But after a while, things got messy. The Game wanted more say in how his tracks sounded. He wanted to pick beats, choose who he worked with, and have a bigger role in decisions. Meanwhile, G-Unit had its own way of doing things. There were meetings, phone calls, and some heated talks. Eventually, The Game said, I can't do this anymore, and left the label. Now you'd think 50 would just nod and let him go. Nah, that wasn't how it happened. 50 went public, announced that The Game was off G-Unit. That felt like a punch to the gut for Game because he had helped make the label feel fresh and different. So yeah, Game hit back hard. He dropped a mixtape called 300 Bars and Runnin', and it was full of lines calling out 50 and his squad. It was like, hey, you wouldn't be here without me. And he didn't hold back, and 50 Cent answered back quickly. He put out tracks where he questioned if The Game really knew what life on those streets was like. He poked fun at Game's background, said he talked big but hadn't lived it. Then Game brought in big names, Birdman, Lil Wayne. They jumped on tracks to back him up. It felt like a rap battle complex. Two sides, each with their own army of features. Fans got super into it. People picked sides like sports teams. You'd go to a party and half the crew would bump Game's latest, while the other half had 50's new diss on repeat. Mixed DJs loved it too. They played every new cut as soon as it dropped. I remember hearing kids on the corner arguing about whose verse was tougher. Social media was just starting to pop off, so Twitter and forums were full of fans debating and sharing mixtape leaks. Even as all that was going on, both guys were making some of their best stuff. Game's lines were sharper, full of West Coast flair, and 50's bars were cold and cutting, right to the point. That anger and competition lit a fire under them. They fed off each other's energy and kept trying to one-up the other. After a few years, though, things calmed down. Around the late 2010s, you started seeing posts like, we cool now. They even bumped into each other at an award show and said a few words. It wasn't a big headline, it was low key, but you could tell both had moved on. They recognized they had shared something big, way bigger than a feud. But for a while, the whole rap world was tuned in to Game versus 50. It felt like old school East Coast versus West Coast drama all over again. And yeah, it showed how fast things can change from working together to trading shots in songs. That chapter proved that sometimes the best music comes from the toughest moments. Finally, take a look at the Rick Ross and 50 Cent story. This one got real heated. It all started around 2009 when they ran into each other backstage at a BET event. Ross had just built Maybach Music Group into something huge. He was riding high, dropping hits and signing new talent. Then he put out a track called Mafia Music where he threw shade at 50's whole vibe, talking about his money, his fame, even his street rep. 50 Cent didn't let that slide. Nah, he hit back with Officer Ricky, a track that cut right to the chase. He reminded everyone that Rick Ross used to be a corrections officer working in prisons before he ever became a rapper. That was a goldmine for 50, who prides himself on real stories from the block. He even dug up public records and made videos showing Ross's old life just to prove his point. What was wild about this feud was how 50 went all in online. He treated Twitter like a battlefield, posting clips, buying ads, even sending out Instagram videos of himself talking smack. He'd drop a 30-second clip that said, hey, remember when Ricky was locking people up? And followers would lose it. Meanwhile, Ross stayed cool, responding with slow, heavy verses that reminded everyone why they called him Rose. He brought in big names. Guests on his tracks included people like Whale and Meek Mill. So it felt like Maybach Music Group itself was riding shotgun. On Officer Ricky, 50 didn't just throw jokes. He used real facts, stuff you could look up in records, to back up his claims. That hit hard, yeah, but Ross answered right back on songs where he talked about money stacking, making power moves, and how he'd command any room he walked into. His voice was deep, steady, like he owned every word he said. Fans loved how raw it was, both sides digging in and refusing to back down. It wasn't just about music, though. Their beef spilled into everything they did. You'd see Ross wearing tees that said Rose in bold letters, And then later, you'd spot special G Unit shirts mocking the Maybach name. They'd mention each other in interviews, on radio shows, during club appearances. Anytime they got a mic, they'd fire off another jab. Even TV spots turned into mini battlegrounds, with hosts asking, "Will you settle this?" And both guys smiling like they were ready for another round. Digging into the feud, you realize both of them used it to keep their names buzzing. Every shade thrown, every track released got talked about on blogs and magazines, on morning shows. It was like free marketing. By battling each other, they stayed in the headlines. And let's be honest, drama sells. People love to pick a side, Team Ross or Team 50, but after a while, the fight just couldn't last forever. As each built their businesses, Ross with his record company and liquor lines, and 50 with his headphones and TV shows, they had bigger things on their plates. Around the mid-2010s, you started hearing less talk of dissies and more talk of new deals. In interviews, they'd say, "But we've moved past that. It wasn't a big announcement, just two guys focusing on their next moves." Still, when you look back, that Ross versus 50 feud was a lesson in how two strong personalities can use every tool, music, social media, merch, to go at each other. It showed how a little shade can turn into big headlines, and how even in a fight, creativity can spark some of your most memorable work. Yeah, they clashed hard, but they also pushed each other to bring their best. And at the end of the day, their back and forth gave hip-hop fans some tracks we still bump today. These rappers all dared to publicly challenge 50 Cent, each feud fueled by pride, loyalty, or a quest for respect. Their clashes ignited legendary tracks, unforgettable moments, and hard lessons about fame's high stakes. Which feud shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, like, share, and subscribe for more raw insights into hip-hop's dramas.